The Miami Dolphins walked away with a win this week, their third victory in the last 4 games, and their second straight. On paper, it looks like momentum. It looks like progress. But if you actually watched this battle with Washington, you walked away thinking one thing. This kind of coaching will not carry this team into the future. Because the truth is harsh. The Dolphins didn't win because of their head coach. They survived in spite of him. The final 3 minutes were a masterclass in chaos, hesitation, and pure mismanagement. Moments like that don't just slip by unnoticed. They define seasons. They expose weaknesses. Now, before we dive deeper, let me drop this right here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. This journey through the NFL season is only just getting started, and you'll want to be here every step of the way. Back to the field, and back to the problems. This wasn't just about a single fourth down decision. The opening drive alone was filled with miscommunication, sloppy execution, and procedural mistakes that simply cannot continue in a coach's fourth season. These are the kinds of things that championship-level teams eliminate long before Week 14. And here's the twist. I don't even hate the decision to go for it on 4th and 1. A lot of fans exploded over it. But trusting your offense, the stronger side of your team, is not the issue. The logic is sound. If you convert, you put the game away. If you score a touchdown, you force Washington to march the entire field in the final minute and a half. If you settle for a field goal instead, you're giving the Commanders plenty of time and only asking them to travel roughly 30 yards for the tying kick. And with the way Miami's defense was bleeding yardage all afternoon, that was practically an invitation. Washington did move the ball. They did reach scoring territory. And that's the problem. The Dolphins didn't control the game. They escaped it. And here's where the real frustration begins. I supported the decision to force Washington to drive the full length of the field with no timeouts. Asking an offense to go from their own 2-yard line to field goal range in under 2 minutes is a completely different challenge than giving them the ball at the 30 or 35 already halfway there. That part made sense. I stand by it. But everything around that moment, everything leading up to it, is exactly why this coaching staff is holding Miami back. Let me ask you this. Did you support the decision? Because during the live reactions and across social media, most fans didn't. But even if you hated the 4th and 1 call, that's not what truly sealed Mike McDaniel's fate on Sunday. The real issue was the 3rd and goal play right before it. Running the ball out of the pistol from the 1-yard line might have been one of the most baffling decisions of the entire season. The Dolphins had been shredding Washington on the ground all afternoon. Devon Achane was unstoppable, ripping off chunk plays and finishing with over 100 yards. As a team, Miami was dominating with more than 5 yards per carry. And despite all that success, instead of lining up under center with your 6 feet 2 inches, 225-pound power back Ollie Gordon and trusting him to punch it in, you call a slow-developing stretch run with almost no room to operate? Of course it got blown up. Of course it lost yards. Everyone watching could feel that disaster coming. But that wasn't the only problem. Think back to the opening drive. Miami still managed to get 3 points, but it was sloppy the whole way. They had to burn a timeout because the play clock was melting away. Later, on 4th and 1 inside Washington territory, which was absolutely the right moment to be aggressive, they ended up taking a delay of game. That can't happen. Not in Week 1, and definitely not in year 4 of a coaching era. Some of that falls on the quarterback, sure, but most of it lands squarely on the man calling the plays and setting the tempo. These procedural mistakes aren't new. They've been haunting this team for years. Slow play calls, miscommunication, unnecessary timeouts, avoidable penalties. Eventually, you have to point to the person in charge. And here's the hard truth Dolphins fans feel deep down. If Miami truly wants to compete for championships, real championships, this can't be the leadership guiding them. The roster has flaws, absolutely. The front office deserves criticism too. But you can't build a Super Bowl team on top of weekly chaos, hesitation, and fundamental breakdowns. At some point, the organization has to choose a direction. And Mike McDaniel cannot be the coach who leads this roster where it believes it can go. There's another layer to this story, one that could shape the future of the franchise. Recent reports suggest that Miami's ownership still wants Mike McDaniel to remain the head coach next season, but that belief is far from guaranteed. Everything now depends on how this season finishes, the direction of the new general manager, and whether that GM believes McDaniel is the right leader moving forward. And then there's the contract situation, the one thing that ties all of this together. Multiple insiders have echoed the same point. Tua Tagovailoa and Mike McDaniel are connected. Their futures are intertwined. Their success, or failure, is judged as one. McDaniel pushed for Tua, stood behind him publicly, and supported the extension that locked him in as Miami's quarterback. That partnership defined the offensive identity of this team. Which means this: if the Dolphins ever decide to move on from Tua, McDaniel is almost certainly gone with him. And if McDaniel is replaced, it's hard to imagine the next regime sticking with Tua long-term. Their careers in Miami rise and fall together. That's why, despite all the frustration earlier this season, benching Tua was never an option. Doing that would have been McDaniel waving the white flag on his own job. He built this version of the Dolphins around Tua's skill set, and he's tied to the results, for better or worse. But none of that changes what we saw on the field. After playing one of their best games of the year against Buffalo, Miami came out flat. They lacked rhythm. They lacked sharpness. They lacked the kind of intensity you expect from a team trying to make a statement in December. It wasn't just a bad performance. It was a reminder of every lingering concern that has followed this team all season. The Dolphins have shown flashes of brilliance this season, no doubt about it. Dominating Atlanta was impressive, but doing the same against a tougher, playoff-caliber opponent like the Bills, that meant more. That was the kind of performance that makes a fan believe a team is finally turning the corner. And that's what makes the letdown against Washington so frustrating. After a statement win over Buffalo, Miami came out against the Commanders with none of that energy, none of that precision, none of that edge. This should have been a convincing victory, not a narrow escape that dragged into overtime. The Dolphins were the better team, but the results didn't reflect it. And the main reason wasn't talent. It was coaching, clock management, game flow, critical decisions. It all unraveled at the worst moments, and it highlighted the same issues that have followed this staff for far too long. Now, to be fair, this team hasn't quit. The players still fight. They still rally around each other. They still compete with real effort and pride. That says something about the locker room. It says something about the assistants and coordinators too. Anthony Weaver, for example, had his defense battling all afternoon. They gave up yards, yes, but only 13 points. They came up clutch in the red zone. They forced the turnover that saved the game. This coaching staff has worked with a roster that hasn't always put them in ideal situations, and they've squeezed everything they can out of it. They deserve credit for that. But credit doesn't erase the bigger truth. At some point, Miami must choose a direction. And keeping the same head coach long-term, after years of the same mistakes resurfacing, may hold this team back more than it helps. Even if the Dolphins finish the season with a record around 7 or 8 wins, even if they pick up victories against teams like New Orleans or New York, that shouldn't automatically secure the job. Because the standard in Miami can't be good enough to hang around. The standard has to be championships. And right now, the way this team is managed in critical moments simply does not reflect championship football. Miami has the talent, the playmakers, and the potential. What it needs now is leadership that turns potential into something real.